March in Oregon is often a dreary affair. The rain hangs in the air like an uninvited guest, and the skies are a perpetual shade of gray. But that morning, as I sipped my lukewarm coffee while perched on the edge of my couch, a chill ran down my spine, not from the cold, but from the email ping that shattered my morning routine. I'm Emily, a 32-year-old marketing professional who has always believed in the good in people. I'm the kind of person who smiles at strangers in the grocery store and holds the door open for anyone behind me. Small acts of kindness, I thought, were the glue that held society together. But that morning, I learned how quickly that belief can be shattered. As I opened the notification, my heart sank. The subject line read, "Delivery confirmation from Panera Bread." At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a mix-up at the restaurant. But as I read through the details, my stomach twisted into knots. Someone, a complete stranger, had used my account to order an extravagant feast: sandwiches, soups, salads, and even pastries, all delivered to an address on the other side of the country. The name attached to the order was Kyle Thompson, and a Google search revealed he lived in Virginia Beach. I felt a surge of anger wash over me, followed by a wave of disbelief. How could someone be so brazen? I had never met this Kyle, had no connection to him, yet here he was, enjoying my hard-earned money as he stuffed his face with my favorite bread bowl. I could see it all play out in my mind, him lounging on his couch, laughing over a mountain of food that wasn't his. The thought of him savoring every bite made my blood boil. I felt like a victim in a crime drama, trapped in a narrative I didn't even write. My roommates, Sarah and Jess, had gone off to work that morning, and I was alone, left to wrestle with my rising frustration. I paced the living room, the rain drumming against the window like a relentless reminder of my helplessness. I could call customer service, I thought, but would that really bring me justice? A warm pang of vindictiveness curled around my heart, and I felt a flicker of determination igniting within me. This wasn't just about food, it was about respect and boundaries. I wanted to confront Kyle Thompson, to let him know that I wouldn't just let this slide. My mind raced with possibilities. Before long, I was no longer the victim in this story, I was a woman on a mission. As I stared into the rain-soaked streets outside, a plan began to form, one that would surely take me down a darker path than I ever imagined. The thrill of potential revenge buzzed through me like a jolt of electricity. I was no longer just a woman whose kindness had been taken advantage of. I was a woman ready to reclaim her power. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. And that's how my quest for vengeance began. What unfolded next was a roller coaster of emotions, ethical dilemmas, and the lengths I was willing to go to for justice, all sparked by a simple act of theft that changed everything. Stay tuned as I unravel the layers of my revenge plot, and perhaps offer a glimpse into the darkness that can reside in us all. The moment I realized that someone had taken my identity to fill their own stomach was a gut punch. It was more than just food, it was a violation of trust, a betrayal that left a sour taste in my mouth. I had shared countless moments with my Panera Bread account, late-night dinners after long workdays, celebratory lunches with friends, even those comforting bread bowls when life felt overwhelming. Each order was a small piece of my routine, a ritual that brought me joy. But now, that joy was twisted into something grotesque. I couldn't escape the image of Kyle lounging in his apartment, blissfully unaware of the chaos he had caused. My heart raced as I imagined him laughing with friends, enjoying the culinary spoils of my labor as if he had done something to earn it. It was infuriating. What made him think he could steal from me without consequence? I envisioned his smirk, the carefree attitude he likely possessed, and it gnawed at my insides like a persistent itch I couldn't scratch. My initial reaction was to contact Panera Bread, to report the fraudulent transaction, to call in the cavalry and reclaim what was stolen. But as the minutes turned into hours and my anger simmered, I realized that wouldn't be enough. I felt small and powerless, trapped in a system that would likely treat my complaint as just another number to add to a pile of complaints. Would they even care about my story? Then, a wave of indignation surged through me, this time more potent, more intoxicating. I was done playing the victim. This wasn't just about money, it was about standing up for myself. It was about sending a message that I wouldn't allow someone to trample over my life without repercussions. As the weight of this injustice bore down on me, I felt a shift inside. I was tired of being the nice girl, the one who lets things slide. The thought of confronting Kyle sent a thrill through me, electrifying my vengeful spirit. I felt a morbid sense of empowerment in knowing that I had his name and address, a key to his world that he had unwittingly handed me. I began to imagine scenarios, perhaps an anonymous email detailing his theft, maybe a letter that would unnerve him just enough to understand the consequences of his actions. I could expose him, make him feel the same fear and shame I felt at the moment of discovery. Yet, with each plan I constructed, I was drawn deeper into a moral spiral. Was I really just a young woman seeking justice, or had I transformed into something darker? The line between right and wrong began to blur, and the thrill of revenge entangled itself with the reality of my actions. I grappled with the ethical implications of my desire. What did it say about me that I couldn't simply let it go? My emotions swung like a pendulum. One moment I felt righteous and empowered, the next I was plagued with guilt. What if I took it too far? What if my actions only fed the cycle of negativity? This internal conflict raged within me as I paced my apartment, feeling the walls close in on my conscience. I caught sight of my reflection in the window, the rain cascading down like tears, and I wondered who I had become. The innocent girl who believed in kindness and empathy was slipping away, replaced by a woman fueled by anger and a thirst for retribution. I had to make a choice, to rise above or to descend into a shadow of myself, willing to play a game that could potentially ruin me. But as night fell and the rain continued to patter against my window, I made my decision. Kyle Thompson had crossed a line, and I refused to be a victim any longer. I would investigate, gather information, and weave a plan that wouldn't just expose him but would leave a mark on his conscience, a mark that would ensure he never forgot the day he stole from me. And so, fueled by a mix of righteousness and rage, I embarked on my dark journey. This wasn't just about Panera Bread anymore. It was about me reclaiming my power, and I was ready to unleash the storm I had been brewing inside. Days slipped by like the rain drenching the streets outside, but the anger simmered just below the surface, refusing to extinguish. Each morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose, my mind spinning with ideas on how to take action against Kyle. At times, I questioned my sanity. Why was I so fixated on someone who had, essentially, just been a blip on my radar? Yet, the image of him indulging in my hard-earned meals haunted me like a ghost, a constant reminder of my violation. Eventually, I decided to take the plunge. I dug deeper into my research. I learned every detail about Kyle Thompson I could find, his social media profiles, his friends, and even his family. It was unnerving, the way my heart raced with each click. I felt like a detective, piecing together the puzzle of a stranger's life, but all I was really doing was sinking deeper into a dark obsession. Then, one evening, I struck gold. While scrolling through an old Facebook profile, I noticed him tagged in a post, a birthday celebration with friends. They laughed and clinked glasses, the kind of joy I had once found in my own life. I felt a surge of envy, not just for the food he had stolen but for the happiness he radiated, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling within me. It felt wrong, almost vulgar, to witness his life while mine felt like a shadow of what it once was. That night, I crafted an anonymous message. I know what you did, Kyle. You stole from me. I have your address. You might want to think twice before doing this again. I sent it through his social media, my heart pounding as I clicked send. Immediately, a sense of exhilaration washed over me, but it was quickly followed by dread. What if he retaliated? What if he didn't even care? But there was no turning back. I had already crossed a line into a territory I never thought I'd visit. I spent the next few days obsessively checking my inbox, waiting for a reply that would validate my actions. But nothing came. Instead, I found myself spiraling deeper into my feelings of inadequacy. The rain matched my mood, the sound growing heavier, drowning out my thoughts. My roommates noticed my distraction. Sarah asked if I was okay, but I brushed her off. I didn't want to admit that my life had become this twisted narrative. I was living with a sense of impending doom, teetering between the thrill of my actions and the guilt that seemed to seep into my very core. Then came the breaking point. While sitting at my desk, anxiously refreshing my email for the 100th time, another notification pinged. It was an email from Panera Bread, but this time it was a notice of a new transaction. My heart raced, but when I opened it, panic surged through my veins. Kyle had used my account again. This time, he ordered an even larger feast, a buffet of his favorites, accompanied by a note that said, "Thanks for the gift." The words felt like a slap in the face. I had warned him, yet he had the audacity to mock me, to revel in my kindness turned against me. That moment, the realization of my powerlessness struck me harder than any thunderous storm outside. I was furious, but also deeply unsettled. This wasn't just about revenge now, it was personal. In that split second, a decision crystallized. If he wanted to play games, I could play too. I began to craft a more elaborate plan, one that would ensure that Kyle would feel the consequences of his actions in a way that would shake his bravado. This was no longer about sending a message, it was about taking back control, about injecting fear into someone who thought they could outsmart me. I began to put together his life, his friends, his favorite hangouts, all drawn from the breadcrumbs left on social media. I dug up his work location, his hobbies, and even his favorite charities. The more I learned, the more emboldened I felt, the rush of revenge morphing into an exhilarating high. I was no longer just a victim, I was an architect of my own justice, and the stakes were rising. But along with that excitement came a growing sense of dread. As I plotted my next steps, the weight of my actions loomed over me like a dark cloud. I was stepping into a territory I could not control, and the thought of what I might become terrified me. What if I crossed a line I couldn't uncross? The final straw was the day I received a notification from my bank stating that my credit card had seen unusual activity. My heart sank as I read the charges. Kyle had not only exploited my Panera account but had also accessed my payment information to order from other places. Now, I felt raw, exposed, like a marionette with strings cut. I was at war, not just with Kyle but with myself. The adrenaline surged through me like a drug, and I realized then and there that I was in too deep to back out. I had to see this through, for better or worse. The thrill of planning something grander, something that would make Kyle feel the devastation he had caused me, took over my every waking thought. I resolved to gather my findings and plot out the details meticulously, ensuring that my revenge would be as painful for him as his actions had been for me. In that moment of clarity, I embraced the darkness within me, knowing that I would not rest until Kyle Thompson understood the true meaning of consequences and the price of his recklessness. I would show him that actions have both repercussions and a reckoning. The storm was brewing, and I would unleash it. But at what cost? The question loomed like a specter, a reminder that in this game, I was no longer just a player, but perhaps the pawn destined to sacrifice my soul for the sake of victory. And so, the gears began to turn, and the stage was set for the ultimate confrontation. Would I reclaim my dignity, or was I destined to lose myself in the pursuit of vengeance? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain, I was ready to dive into the tempest, and I wouldn't emerge unscathed. The rain continued to pour outside, but now it felt like a symphony of chaos, an echo of the storm brewing within me. Kyle was about to learn that revenge is a dish best served chilly, and I was ready to feast. Stay tuned for the culmination of my journey, a confrontation that would shake the foundation of my beliefs and test the very essence of who I was becoming. Would I find the closure I sought, or would my quest for revenge unravel everything I held dear? Join me as I delve into the storm, where shadows and light intertwine in ways I never anticipated. The rain had become a near-constant companion, drumming against the windows like the heartbeat of my rising fury. I could barely focus on work as I dove deeper into my plan, stirring my thoughts into a frenzied whirlpool of ideas. Every time I thought about Kyle lounging on his couch, gorging himself on food that didn't belong to him, the fire within me reignited. The more I lingered on it, the clearer my resolution became. I wouldn't just let this slide. I wanted Kyle to feel the weight of his actions, to understand the ripple effect of his selfishness. One particularly dreary afternoon, a thunderstorm brewed outside, mirroring the tempest inside of me. I sat at my desk, staring at the wall, my mind racing through scenarios. I pictured him, the smirk of triumph on his face as he received another delivery on my dime. It was as if he was laughing at me. At that moment, I felt the darkness wrap around me like a cloak, whispering sweet promises of revenge. I leaned forward, heart thudding in my chest, and pulled out a notepad. As I wrote down my thoughts, the words flowed like an uncontrollable current. Expose him. Embarrass him. Make him feel small. I began to outline the steps of my plan, mapping out my revenge like a seasoned tactician. I could send an anonymous letter to his workplace, detailing his theft. Perhaps I could reach out to his friends, alerting them to the cheater in their midst. Or better yet, I could file a report with the police, creating an air of fear that would leave him constantly looking over his shoulder. But with every suggestion I wrote down, a flicker of doubt would creep in, reminding me of the kind-hearted person I used to be. Was this really me? I was a girl who believed in kindness, who found joy in small acts of empathy. Now I was transforming into a specter of vengeance, willing to go to terrifying lengths simply to teach someone a lesson. In that moment, a wave of clarity washed over me. My hand paused over the page as I contemplated my moral compass. It felt as if I were standing at a crossroads, and the path I chose would define who I would become. It struck me that revenge was seductive, it promised satisfaction, a sense of retribution, but at what cost? How far was I willing to go to satisfy my bitterness? But as I weighed my options, another thought ignited the flame within me: he deserved this. He had invaded my life uninvited, taken from me without remorse, and reveled in the spoils of my hard work. As this realization settled over me, a sense of empowerment surged through me. I was not just a victim, I had the power to turn the tables. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when I received a notification on my phone. Kyle had posted a photo of the food he had ordered, showcasing a feast sprawled across his dining table. Underneath it, he had captioned, "A little gift from my favorite Panera Bread fan." At that moment, I snapped. The audacity of him made my blood boil. Fueled by fury and betrayal, I made my decision: I would disrupt his life the way he had disrupted mine. I envisioned him receiving a barrage of complaints from his friends, co-workers, even family. I would weave a web around him that would ensnare his very sanity. The rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins felt intoxicating. This was the turning point I had been waiting for, the moment I realized that I could take control of the narrative. That night, I crafted my letters meticulously. Each one was a warning, a reminder that he had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I printed them out, feeling a sense of glee as I prepared envelopes addressed to his job and friends. This would be an act of exposure, one that would leave no room for denial. As I licked the envelope seals, the weight of the world seemed to lift off my shoulders. It felt liberating to step into my power, to embrace the darker side of myself that had been simmering just beneath the surface. I wasn't just reclaiming my dignity, I was about to unleash a storm upon Kyle Thompson, and there was no turning back. And so, the die was cast. I sealed the envelopes and slipped them into the mailbox with a sense of finality. I felt alive, invigorated by the prospect of revenge and the prospect of justice, served cold. My heart raced as I imagined Kyle's reaction, the shock, the fear that would ripple through his life like an earthquake. With each passing moment, I realized I had crossed a threshold. I was no longer just a woman wronged, I had become an avenger, an architect of chaos, ready to dismantle the illusion of control Kyle had so carelessly wielded. The storm outside paled in comparison to the tempest within me. I had ignited something vile and glorious within, an urge that I knew would not be easily extinguished. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a twisted journey that would force me to confront the very darkness I had embraced. I was all in now, and nothing could stop the reckoning that was coming for Kyle Thompson. It would be tit for tat, until he understood the true meaning of accountability. The night was dark, but my resolve illuminated the path ahead. And with that determination, I took a deep breath, ready to dive into the chaos I had unleashed. The storm had broken, now it was only a matter of time before the winds turned against Kyle. Stay tuned as I navigate the uncharted waters of my unfolding revenge, grappling with the shadows of my own making. Would I find satisfaction, or would the price of vengeance lead to unforeseen consequences? Join me in the next chapters as the story dives deeper into the maelstrom of my choices, where the line between right and wrong becomes blurred in the face of retribution. With my heart pounding in sync with the relentless rain outside, I knew it was time to execute the next phase of my revenge on Kyle Thompson. I felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through me, a potent cocktail of fury and determination. I began to map out a detailed plan that promised not just satisfaction, but a reckoning that Kyle would never forget. The first part of my plan was deceptively simple. I crafted several anonymous complaints targeting different aspects of Kyle's life. I used an old email address that I hadn't touched in years, one that would never trace back to me. I composed each email with a level of precision that matched my growing excitement. I started with his workplace, sending a message to HR, detailing how Kyle had committed fraud by using my credit card. I attached screenshots of my Panera Bread account showing the unauthorized orders and emphasized the need for immediate action. I painted a vivid picture of how irresponsible he was, thrusting the very notion of trust into the spotlight. Next, I moved on to his friends. I found their social media accounts and crafted a message that played on my own victimhood. Hey, I don't want to cause drama, but I think you should know that Kyle has been ordering food using someone else's credit card. It's pretty messed up, right? Just thought you should be aware. With each message I sent, I felt an exhilarating sense of control washing over me. I imagined the ripple effect of doubt and anxiety seeping into Kyle's life, displacing the smugness he had displayed in his posts. Fueled by the initial success, I moved to phase 2, the social media expose. I crafted a fake profile, complete with a believable backstory. I positioned myself as a concerned citizen of Virginia Beach who just happened to notice a red flag involving a local man who had been ordering food under dubious circumstances. I took screenshots of Kyle's food posts, his lavish meals, proudly showcased on Instagram, and paired them with my own polite but pointed observations. Isn't it funny how someone can enjoy such expensive meals without ever paying for them? Just a thought. #support local businesses. I felt an undeniable thrill at the idea of Kyle's friends and family discovering his deceit. I imagined their shock and disappointment, and it sent shivers of excitement down my spine. As my digital assault began, I prepared for phase 3, the unforgettable delivery. I decided to hit Kyle where it would hurt the most, his stomach, the very thing he had violated. Using the address I had found earlier, I scoured local delivery services and found a few restaurants that offered large family-style meals. I placed multiple orders under his name, each one more extravagant than the last. I scheduled the deliveries for the following Friday evening, ensuring they coincided with a time when he'd likely be home. I could envision him answering the door, bewildered, as a parade of unsuspecting delivery drivers presented him with mountains of food he didn't order. I couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of his confusion, his smug demeanor cracking as he was inundated with orders he had never placed. I even left a note with one of the orders that read, "Enjoy your next meal, Kyle. You might want to check your credit card statements." But I didn't stop there. The grand finale would be the most exhilarating part of my plan, the moment where everything I had done came crashing down on him. I knew that nothing would embarrass Kyle more than being exposed not just to his friends, but to the entire community. So, I reached out to a few local blogs and small news sites, crafting a story about a local fraudster who had been stealing food from others. I shared the crafted evidence, my anonymous emails to his workplace, the screenshots of his lavish meals, and the complaints that had flooded in. I spun a tale of betrayal, emphasizing how Kyle hadn't just stolen food but had undermined the very essence of community support. My goal was to set the wheels of social punishment in motion so that when the news broke, he would be left reeling from the consequences, his reputation painted in shades of deceit. With each step of my plan unfolding, I felt an intoxicating mix of satisfaction and dread. I was no longer just a woman seeking revenge, I was the orchestrator of an elaborate scheme that straddled the line between justice and chaos. But deep down, a part of me questioned just how far I was willing to go. Every email I sent, every package I ordered, brought me closer to someone I barely knew, yet I was becoming increasingly entangled in a web of my own making. As the hours turned to days, I became increasingly eager to see my plan come to fruition. I could already imagine the fallout, the confusion, the anger, and ultimately, the reckoning that would end with Kyle facing the consequences of his careless actions. I felt alive, but I also felt the weight of the darkness I was embracing. Would this truly lead to my closure, or would it only deepen my sense of resentment and guilt? There was no turning back now, and as the adage goes, revenge is a dish best served cold, just like the food Kyle had stolen from me. The stage was set, and I was ready to unleash the storm I had been brewing, unaware of the emotional turbulence that awaited me on this journey of retribution. Join me as I delve deeper into the chaos, navigating the shadows of my revenge, and exploring the consequences of my actions. Could this path of vengeance ultimately lead to my own self-destruction, or would it grant me the closure I so desperately sought? Stay tuned for the heart-pounding climax where the storm collides with reality, and the true cost of revenge becomes painfully clear. The day had finally arrived, a culmination of my pent-up anger and meticulously crafted plans. I felt a potent cocktail of exhilaration and dread swirling in my stomach as the storm clouds gathered overhead, mirroring the tempest within me. Friday evening was set for Kyle's grand reveal, and I stood before the mirror, steeling myself for what was about to unfold. As the clock ticked closer to delivery time, I replayed every detail of my plot in my head. The multitude of food orders I had scheduled to arrive at Kyle's door felt like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode and lay bare the depths of his deceit. At the same time, I couldn't shake the creeping doubt: was I truly prepared for the chaos that would ensue? In my quest for revenge, I had crossed a threshold into a world where the outcome was uncertain, and the stakes grew higher with every passing moment. As the clock struck 6 p.m., I sat on my couch, heart pounding, eyes glued to my phone. My fingers trembled as I refreshed social media, waiting for the first signs that my plan had worked. I couldn't help but imagine the scene unfolding in his apartment: Kyle, smug and satisfied, taking his place in front of the door as delivery after delivery arrived. Each knock would peel back another layer of his false bravado, leaving him vulnerable and exposed. Then, the notifications started rolling in. Pictures popped up on my feed, capturing the scene from every angle. Friends tagged him, their messages filled with disbelief and laughter. "Wow, what a feast." Read one comment. "Did you win the lottery, Kyle?" Chimed in another. The rush of satisfaction surged through me, igniting my heart like a roaring fire. But just as I reveled in my small victory, my phone buzzed with a direct message, a message that made my blood run cold. "Emily, is there something you want to tell me?" It was Sarah, my roommate. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized she had seen the posts, probably even the contentious emails I had sent. A wave of unease washed over me. Had my actions truly spiraled beyond my control? I quickly composed myself, crafting a response that sounded casual, nonchalant. "What do you mean?" I wrote back, heart racing. "Just saw some wild stuff on social media. What's going on with Kyle Thompson? Seems like you've got a personal vendetta against him?" Panic fluttered in my chest. Had I gone too far? The whirlwind of excitement from the night shifted, turning into a storm of anxiety. I returned to the chaos unfolding in Kyle's world, refreshing his social media once more. It was a flurry of activity, his friends were in disbelief, and the social media storm was gaining momentum. But then, one comment caught my eye and sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. "Kyle, I think someone's stalking you. Are you okay?" My heart sank. I realized I hadn't just orchestrated his exposure, I had potentially put myself in the line of fire as well. Had my actions turned me into a villain in this narrative? As I stepped back and surveyed the damage I had wrought, doubt gnawed at the edges of my satisfaction. The darkness I had embraced was now creeping around me, wrapping its tendrils around my conscience. But there was no time for second-guessing. I was in too deep, and the final act of my plan was lying in wait. The doorbell rang, echoing through the house, every fiber of my being tingled with anticipation. This was the moment. I jumped up and rushed to the window, peeking through the curtains to catch a glimpse of the chaos outside. To my surprise, I saw Kyle standing at his doorstep, flanked by delivery drivers holding an array of food bags, his expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. I couldn't help but smile, the satisfaction swelling as he fumbled with his phone, likely trying to piece together what the hell was happening. But then, I noticed something I hadn't anticipated: a camera crew hidden in the bushes across the street. A local news van was documenting the unfolding spectacle. Apparently, I wasn't the only one interested in Kyle's downfall. I watched in disbelief as the crew honed in on him, their cameras rolling and capturing every moment of his utter humiliation. In that jarring moment, the weight of my actions slammed down on me like a tidal wave. I had unleashed a storm not just on Kyle, but also on myself. What had started as a simple act of revenge was spiraling into a public spectacle, one that would follow Kyle and potentially destroy me along with him. Every ounce of triumph I had felt moments earlier faded. I processed the reality of the situation. The thrill of watching him unravel was quickly eclipsed by the realization that I had crossed a line I could never uncross. I was now an unwitting participant in a public shaming, a dark figure, lurking in the shadows of my own drama. The reporters began to approach Kyle, thrusting microphones into his face, and I felt my heart drop as he struggled to explain. "I don't know what's happening. Someone hacked my account," he stammered, the color draining from his face. How deliciously poetic, I thought, but I was quickly drowned in the realization that my involvement could very well become a narrative of its own. In the aftermath of this chaos, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Sarah and Jess. They were confused and alarmed, and I could sense that their text messages were pushing the boundaries of concern and anger. "Emily, what did you do? This is getting out of hand." Read one message. In that moment, I was faced with a decision: to step forward and reclaim my narrative or to retreat into the shadows, leaving Kyle to fend for himself amidst the rising storm. Guilt rushed through me, intertwining with the remnants of my desire for vengeance. Would I have to face the consequences of my actions? Would I be the monster in this story? As I sat frozen in my indecision, I caught a glimpse of Kyle collapsing against his doorway, consumed by the weight of his humiliation and the scrutiny of the world. Suddenly, it wasn't just about revenge, it was about seeing the humanity in him, despite the pain he had inflicted on me. Torn between the satisfaction of his downfall and the wisdom of compassion, I knew it was time to make a choice. The storm was raging, both outside and within, and as I took a deep breath, I felt the tide turning. Would I let my quest for revenge consume me, or could I find a way to reclaim my dignity without sacrificing my soul? The question loomed large as the chaos unfolded before me. I was standing at a crossroads, a moment where I could either embrace the consequences of my actions or choose a path of redemption for both Kyle and myself. The climax of my revenge story had arrived, and it held within it the potential for change. Would I step into the light, or was I destined to lose myself in the shadows? Stay tuned as I navigate the consequences of my actions and determine whether the storm of revenge can lead to a moment of self-discovery or if it will ultimately drown me in darkness. Join me as I explore the final confrontation, where the lines between right and wrong become blurred, and the true cost of vengeance is revealed. As the cameras rolled and the world bore witness to Kyle's unraveling, I felt my pulse quicken. The weight of my revenge sat heavily on my chest, even as the initial satisfaction of seeing him squirm melted into something more complex and nagging. The thrill had turned sour, morphing into a concoction of guilt, anxiety, and shame. This spectacle was no longer just about him, it was about me, too, my choices, my morality, my humanity. I stood frozen behind the curtain, a voyeur in my own drama. I watched as the local news anchor dissected the events unfolding before them, framing Kyle not just as a fraud, but as a tragic figure caught in a web of his own deceit. With every word, I felt my heart sink deeper into guilt's grasp. Had I really done this? Had my need for retribution transformed me into the very monster I had sought to expose? The rain continued to pour outside, an endless rhythm echoing the turmoil within me. A notification pinged on my phone, drawing my attention away from the scene. It was a message from Sarah. "Emily, you need to explain yourself. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't you." Her words hit me like a cold slap. This wasn't who I was. I had spent years trying to build a life rooted in kindness, yet here I was, orchestrating a public humiliation for someone who had wronged me. The irony was hard to swallow. In seeking to reclaim my power, I had inadvertently become the very thing I loathed. As Kyle's face filled the screen, a cascade of emotions washed over me. Confusion, embarrassment, and betrayal painted across his features. I couldn't help but reflect on my own emotions during that fateful morning. Anger and frustration had consumed me, but now, watching him bear the weight of public scrutiny, I felt a strange empathy twisting in my gut. Was I really any better than he was? I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I needed to respond to Sarah, to explain myself. But what could I say? I lost myself and revenge didn't feel like an acceptable excuse. I needed to grapple with the reality that I had crossed a line, and the consequences were rippling far beyond Kyle's doorstep. The phone buzzed again, followed by a flood of notifications from social media, a whirlwind of comments, tags, and news articles about Panera Bread fraud, the shocking local story. My stomach clenched at the thought of my name being dragged into the narrative. What had I done? Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Jess. "Emily, what the hell is going on? You've got to come home and talk to us." The urgency in her voice pierced through the fog clouding my mind. I knew I couldn't ignore this any longer. With a sense of dread tightening my chest, I made my way back to my apartment, each step heavy with the burden of my actions. My roommates were waiting for me, their faces a mixture of concern and disappointment. "Emily, what were you thinking?" Sarah asked as I entered, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "This isn't like you. You've sunk to his level." It was supposed to be a warning, I blurted out, desperately trying to justify my choices. "He stole from me. He was getting away with it." "Stealing from you doesn't justify this," Jess interjected, her voice steady but full of gravity. "You've turned into someone we don't recognize. This is not who you are." Their words hit hard, and I felt the walls of my carefully crafted justification begin to crumble. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands, overwhelmed by the realization that I had become entangled in a web of my own making. "I just wanted him to understand," I whispered, the weight of shame crashing down upon me. I wanted him to feel the fear I felt when I realized what he had done. Sarah sat beside me, her expression softened. "But does he? Does he even know you're behind this? You've created this persona of revenge, Emily. You need to decide who you want to be." In that moment, the clarity I had been avoiding washed over me like a cleansing rain. I realized that revenge wasn't going to fill the void of betrayal or restore my sense of dignity. Instead, it had only left me feeling hollow and empty, disconnected from the person I truly wanted to be. "I need to make this right," I said firmly, bolstered by a newfound determination. "I can't let this go on." The storm had gathered enough energy, and it was time to dispel it. I quickly pulled out my laptop and began drafting an email to the local news stations, outlining my role in the exposé. I would confess my actions and explain the motivations that had driven me to this point. I needed to own my mistakes, to take accountability for my thirst for vengeance. As my fingers danced over the keyboard, I felt a weight lift. I was scared, vulnerable, and uncertain about the consequences of my admission, but I knew I had to step into the light. The truth would set me free, allowing me to reclaim my identity and dismantle the chaos I had sown. When I hit send, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. While I couldn't undo the damage I had caused, I could choose a different path, a path of healing and redemption. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find a way to reclaim my dignity without tearing others down in the process. The rain began to subside, and I felt a quiet resolve settle within me. Maybe Kyle would learn something from this too. Maybe he would understand the fear of losing something precious. I glanced at the window, watching the last remnants of the storm fade into the distance. The aftermath of my actions would surely leave scars, but I hoped that in taking responsibility, I could begin to heal, not just for myself, but for Kyle as well. As I looked at my roommates, I felt a renewed sense of purpose rising within me. I didn't have to be a victim or a villain. I could be someone who chooses empathy, compassion, and, ultimately, forgiveness. And with that realization, I understood that the most powerful form of revenge is not to tear someone down, but to rise above and reclaim who you truly are. Perhaps the greatest victory is found not in revenge, but in the courage to rise from the ashes of our misdeeds and strive to be better. In my heart, I knew I was ready to embark on a new journey, a journey toward redemption, where the true essence of my character could shine through the storm.